Hello everyone, I hope everybody's okay. I just want to make a short video or I guess an audio about the war, the conflict in Ukraine. Ukrainians and Russians, besides speaking the same language, of course Ukrainians have their own language also, but they speak Russian, almost all of them. And it was part of the Soviet Union. And I read somewhere that I guess, the empire, Soviet Empire, or before that, the whole thing started in Ukraine. So there were, anyway, I guess maybe you could say they're related, even if they're not the same folks. They're related to each other. So this war is really nonsensical because there was no need for it. I think Putin panicked because Putin was for several months. I remember he was seeking an assurance from the U.S. and the NATO that they would not place the missiles near the border, which is a reasonable request. We wouldn't want Soviet Union, old Soviet Union, or Russia put install missiles next to the border, next to the Rio Grande, the river, Rio Grande, or the border of Mexico and the U.S., southern U.S. So it's very illogical that Putin wanted the U.S. and the EU to give them the assurance that these missiles would not be installed near the border because they could reach Moscow in a short distance and then Moscow could not react. So basically, it's a mutual agreement and it does make sense. And also, Zelensky, who used to be a TV celebrity, with all due respect, he had no experience in politics. He kept saying till the last week, 1 week before or a few days before the invasion, he kept saying that he wanted to join NATO. Now, these are two different, I guess, topics, but they actually relate to one another because the NATO basically was there to counteract Warsaw Pact. There is no more Warsaw Pact. The Soviet Union now is Russia. Russia is not the power that it used to be, even though they are nuclear power, but nobody's going to, in their right minds, nobody's going to basically use nuclear bombs or whatever, against the enemy because they know that basically ends up in mutual destruction of both countries, if not the whole world. What is very interesting is that if you look at the news and what the EU countries and the US are doing, they're not taking even one step towards the negotiations with Russia. Nobody's offering anything to Putin. Nobody's saying to Putin, come and sit down and talk. Although Putin several times has said that he's ready to talk, but the EU and the US don't want it. This is the same path that happened during World War I, that because of the conflict with, in Europe itself, then the British got involved. This is a path towards a wider, much wider war. And it shows you that the European countries and the US are not interested in peaceful negotiations that puts an end to this conflict. Now, why are they interested in sending weapons and free of charge? But it will cost their citizens money because those defense contractors, those defense industries, they made these weapons cost them millions, if not billions of dollars. They're not going to give it away, but their governments basically making a gift out of these, and then the citizens of Germany, perhaps, and England, the UK, for that matter, and the US will end up paying for it. Somebody has to pay for it. So the taxpayers of those countries are supporting this war unwillingly. They don't want to support this war. Nobody sends any delegate to any team to go and sit down and see to put an end to it. Every conflict can be resolved peacefully if you make an effort. But you can see the Europeans, their only effort they're making, they're sending more tanks. Now they're asking Germany for Leopard tanks. Well, this is like you have two sons. If parents have two sons, some parents say they have two sons and they're fighting, and the mother gives one boy a club and the father gives the other boy a knife. Is that logical? Is that what really two logical parents that they're okay in their heads? Do they do that? No, no parents in their right minds would do that. But the US is doing it. Now, the reason for it is that the US and the EU are never interested in peaceful negotiations because the defense industries bring money to themselves, so they get rich. And the indirect consequence of this war is the shortage of fuel, and we see the results in the UK that ordinary folks are suffering, and their governments keep sending weapons that will cost the British citizens eventually, if not now, billions of dollars to Ukraine. Now, that means this war is going to go on and on and on. So the defense industries get rich. Oil companies, because of the shortage of fuel, they have a very good excuse. They get rich. They've already got rich beyond their imagination. Shell and BP, they made just tremendous profits last year. So this is the result of a system that does not even care about their own citizens. And so by sending the weapons to Ukraine, the war will go on and on and on. The other thing is just a matter of, I guess, the side profit or side benefit of this conflict is that the US is trying to influence Ukraine. They're looking for a position to basically coerce Ukraine into what they want from them. And European countries are really powerless. They're powerless because the US can punish them. If they say no to the US, the banking system in the US puts them on the blacklist. The same thing they do with them when they deal with countries like Iran. They will actually blacklist their banks. They won't let them do any business. They cut them off from SWIFT, which is the international means of transferring money. So they have U.S. doesn't have to send military or equipment or to fight a war. They can punish you financially. They do the same thing to European countries. They punish their banks. So if they don't listen to the U.S., basically U.S. coerces them, twists their arms to listen and follow the wrong policies. If you don't believe me, watch the news. Nobody's doing anything to end this conflict peacefully, and you can see Putin, right or wrong, he's asking for it. He says, let's talk, let's talk. He kept asking Zelensky before the conflict started, don't ask to be a member of NATO. And this man opened his mouth. One sentence that I want to join NATO, I think started the war because Putin panicked. Rightly so. I'm not for any war. I'm not for even one person to get killed. But he panicked. I wouldn't have done it. Millions of other people wouldn't have done it. But we are not in his shoes. For the same reason that Biden, whom I like, and I supported him before, he's doing the same thing that the system in the US is doing, because defense contractors basically have the government by you know what, and they just squeeze them and they sell their weapons. Because you see, when you make tanks, a tank doesn't get old, really. Sherman tanks from World War II, sometimes pistols from Civil War, if you find it, they can still fire. They're bombs that haven't gone off, and they're in the soil of the US from a long time ago. They're still potentially explosive. So weapons don't get old. So what do? With all this surplus? They have to get destroyed. When they get destroyed, they can replace them. And then the other side benefit from this is that they see how their tanks perform in real war. Nobody cares. American government and European governments don't care how many Ukrainians die. That's nonsense. If they did care, they would put an end to it. They would try to negotiate with Russia, see what's going on between these two countries. Thank you so much and God bless.